We have survived the long offseason. It is officially game week. TCU Horned Frog fans, TCU takes on Stanford Friday night. I'm going to give you 5 reasons to be excited about this upcoming season. That's coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. So subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Would love if you would do that. It's football season, so I'm seeing more people come to YouTube. Views are going up, subscribers are going up, and I really appreciate you guys making the show your first listen of the day. We're talking Stanford this week. It is officially game week. We have survived the long offseason. Congratulations. On Friday night, we're actually going to get to see this team in action. And all the questions we had about how much has Josh Hoover improved? How is this offensive line going to come together with 3 potentially new starters going into the season? What's the new defense under Andy Avalos going to look like? All of that will be answered, not fully, but we'll at least get a glimpse of what this team is going to be this upcoming season when they take the field in Palo Alto in a couple of days. And someone commented on an episode last week, and they said, listen, I'm a lifelong TCU fan. I enjoy the show, but you should do a podcast where you give us a lot of positivity and pump us up for the upcoming season. And he said that I typically use cautious optimism, which is a pretty fair characterization. You know, one thing about this show, I'm a TCU fan. I want them to do well. I want them to succeed. I'm not going to be a total homer. I'm not just going to pump up the team for no reason. I'm going to try to keep things as honest as possible and just give my assessments of what this team is, which means sometimes I overreact in the other direction as well. And we get to go through these emotions together. It's part of the fun of the show. But I wanted to take that to heart. And like a lot of people that are covering TCU or are evaluating this team, there's a bunch of question marks. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like when they take the field. They're coming off a disappointing season. However, I do think there are players and coaches and aspects of this football team that as a fan, you should truly be excited about. And I want to give those to you today. So first off, we'll start here. This receiver room is really talented. I don't know how it's all going to shake out, who's going to be the main stars if and when it comes together this year. But I think this group really of skill players is about as talented as we've seen in a long time. Savion Williams on the outside, I've discussed him a lot over the course of this offseason. I think this is his year where he's set to really break out. And at least during practice, coaches have said we're making a point to get him the football. Because one thing I really loved about the second half of the season when they used him more was they would get the ball out to him on bubble screens. You know, that quick passing game that sometimes supplements the run game in this offense. And Savion was really good at that because he was just somebody that was going to get positive yards, whether it was because he put his head down and ran through somebody or made a move. He just had a very good feel for how to make that first man miss or how to brush off that first tackle and get up the field and get positive yards. So I think especially in early downs, that's something that you need to go to and be aware of. Like, hey, we have a guy that is tough to tackle, that is big and strong. And so if he just leans forward, he's going to get positive yardage, but he can also run really well. They've also mentioned that there have been times and formations where he's in the backfield. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I know they tried to get the ball to him on some end around, some reverse type things last season with mixed results, but just opportunities for him to get the ball in his hands and use that speed and athleticism. And also, this offense is going to have to find a way to stretch the field this year. Savion's going to be a part of that by going up and getting 50-50 balls. On the other side, I think Eric McAllister, it appears he's going to be your starter, maybe Dalen Wright, but both those guys, Eric McAllister's coming off a really productive season at Boise State, almost 1,000 yards in less than 10 games. A vertical threat, someone who had a lot of yards per catch last year and adds a dimension to this offense that TCU was missing this past season. You've also got Dalen Wright, who since he got here from Minnesota a few off seasons ago, the word on him is that this is a guy that can do it all. He's got the physical ability. It's really just about staying healthy. And if you're going to be able to rotate these outside wide receivers, then that possibly takes some pressure off him getting hit, taking contact, and I think allows him to be more productive this upcoming season. In the slot, J.P. Richardson, who was their best receiver last season, he's back. He had good rapport with Josh Hoover. Savion's another guy that it really feels like he was taking a step forward when Josh Hoover took the reins of that offense. You got some speed guys like Major Everhart and Jordan Bailey that I think could be a factor in special teams, but should also be someone to watch in that slot position when JP needs a breather, and in some 4 and 5 wide sets. Hopefully you can get them on the field and allow them to use their speed in those one-on-one matchups to break away and make big plays. Jack Besh, another guy who was a freshman All-American at LSU, transferred in this past year, dealt with some injury concerns, wasn't always available and on the field, but a fully healthy Jack Besh is another weapon that they can use in this offense. And there's pass catchers at the tight end position too. Drake Dabney coming off a very productive season at Baylor, someone who they can use in the middle of the field. Chase Curtis, also a guy that they really like. There's no shortage of players to throw the ball to. And I feel like this is going to be a year where Josh Hoover can spread the ball around, have a lot of different options, and really grow as a passer. And we saw flashes last year of when they asked him to throw the ball a lot, he could be accurate, he could be on time, and he could hit guys in rhythm. So that'll be a huge key this season. Secondly, Josh Hoover in really year 2 of the system. I think from an intangible standpoint, Josh possesses everything you want out of a quarterback. The team responds to him well. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders. He seems like a leader and the type of guy that's going to put in the extra work to be successful. If it doesn't work out, I don't think it has anything to do with his work ethic and his ability to be prepared and be ready on the field. Another season in this offense, a lot of mental reps that he's gotten to take over the past few months. Another season with some of the supporting cast in these receivers and a revamped offensive line that should be able to hold up better physically and protect him, which will allow him to make plays across the field. So I'm excited about seeing what Josh Hoover can do and really what his growth looks like. I think the biggest thing here is one way or the other, we have an entire season now to kind of figure out who this guy is. And he was sort of an unknown going into last year, but he showed a lot of promise when he took over the job. So now you have a really good young player like Haas Haney, but you also have a full season to see, okay, what does it look like when Josh, provided he stays healthy, gets a full body of work over the course of a year, how much does he develop and grow as a passer? And from time to time, can they use him in the run game? Even though that's not his calling card, could that be, a threat that they have to move forward with this year? The Andy Avalos defense is the third reason to be excited for TCU football this upcoming year. And Coach Avalos, things didn't end great at Boise State as a head coach, but I think this is a perfect situation for him because he can come in and really he gets to be the head coach of this defense. And we saw in the high school recruiting ranks and also in the transfer portal that Coach Avalos and his staff are already trying to form the identity of the type of players that they want. And it really comes down to versatility and athleticism. That position flex, guys that can rush the passer, guys that can get sideline to sideline, be disruptive, get behind the line of scrimmage, make plays. And so you're going to see a defensive line that's unleashed more this year. That hopefully is allowed to be in more one-on-one situations where it's advantageous to get off the edge and get to the quarterback. You've got a pretty deep linebacker core with guys like Johnny Hodges, a transfer like Caleb Alarmzor, Nnamdi Obaizor, who's your leading tackler last year. There's a good combination of young players, experienced players, and transfers that should be able to come in and right away make an impact, like Travis Broughton on the outside at corner coming in from Utah. Lamarian James, who came over from Old Dominion, getting that other start at corner this upcoming season. Disguising coverages, allowing corners to play more aggressively and more physically, having more physicality in general. He's talked during fall camp about, hey, this is tackle football. This is a sport where you have to bring the wood. You have to set the tone, meet people at the line of scrimmage and knock them around. So that identity is going to be a huge key to what this defense ends up looking like this season. Staying on that theme, a new position in the stud linebacker spot. It's provided kind of a renaissance for some guys who were sort of in a lost place. I mean, Jonathan Bax was going to transfer before the season started, but he ends up coming back because suddenly now there's a spot for him to really thrive. Cooper McDonald and Devin Deal come over from San Diego State and Tulane respectively and have a chance to be on this team and make an impact in one-on-one edge rush situations. Marcel Brooks, who has been all over the field for TCU since he started here, but it seems like he's finally found his place as a situational pass rusher in this defense. They're going to allow athletes to go make plays, and they're going to try to set the tone, dictate the pace, and really be more aggressive this upcoming season. And I'm stoked to see, what happens when they take the field and we get a glimpse of what these different looks are going to be and everything that comes with it. And then finally, special teams, man, it's an aspect of the game that people don't really think about unless it's bad. And last year it was bad. Now, part of that was because the offense struggled and put Griffin Kell in some bad situations, but he was inconsistent. Jordan Sandy had a tough year as well. And then in the return game, not a lot there. Kyle Limmerman comes in from South Lake Carroll, best kicker in the country, according to, scouting services that grade those things. Ethan Craw comes over from Australia. He's been booming punts in fall practice, apparently. So you can win games and you can steal points by being effective on special teams. And I think they'll find somebody in the return game, whether it's JoJo Earl, JP Richardson, Major Everhart, Jordan Bailey. There's no shortage of guys with speed on this team. And so someone should be able to step in and be an effective punt returner and continue that great tradition that TCU's had. Darius Davis this weekend against the Cowboys on an end around. He goes 70 yards for a touchdown. He's found a role in the NFL. Kavontae Turpin on the other side. He's found a role in the NFL. Jeremy Curley had a nice career. There's been so many players that have been really effective in that spot of changing the game, flipping field position with a punt return or a kickoff return. That was sorely missing from this team last season. And so I think that's an area where there's going to be some growth and development this year. And we're going to get a glimpse of it on Friday night. So those are all reasons to be excited about TCU football this upcoming year. When we come back, we'll get into some Big 12 realignment news, potential rumors that are happening. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day. Are you looking for a new way to spend time on your phone that doesn't involve social media? Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Download it directly from the App Store or visit ultimate-cfb.com. You get to control a program. It's an amazing game where you step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your favorite college program to glory. Recruiting players, hiring coaches, overseeing training camps, handling school scholarships. You control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. It's completely free, has no ads, and it's playable offline. We have a special offer code for you, Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Download the game, visit the App Store or ultimate-cfb.com, ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy. Do it today. So one thing I appreciate about Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, is that he's always willing to think outside the box. And there's a revenue gap between the Big 10, the SEC, and the rest of college sports. And he has been proactive in saying, hey, let's find ways to make this deficit less. Whether it's international games, which that seemed to have hit a snag, so they kind of slowed that down. But there's going to be some games played in Mexico, Big 12 games played in Mexico in upcoming years. They did their own combine for NFL prospects. He outmaneuvered the Pac-12, obviously, in getting a TV deal done. But the latest, according to multiple reports, The Athletic had it first, is that the Big 12 is in early talks to add UConn. Now, this is not an imminent move. They'd have to get approval from the Big 12 schools, which supposedly right now that's the thing that's kind of most precarious about this potential deal. They're getting pushback from different schools in the conference. And you might say, okay, what do you add with UConn? Really, you're adding a great basketball school, a men's team that's won 2 straight national titles. Women's program is, the standard when it comes to women's basketball. Their baseball program is actually pretty salty too, especially for a school in the Northeast that, traditionally that region doesn't do super well when it comes to baseball in the college ranks at least. So Brett Yormark has long believed, he hasn't really gotten into details about it, but Big 12 basketball is outstanding. It's just a great product. There's outstanding parity. And he seems to think that this is a way to get more money for the league. If they could somehow package the television rights to their basketball games as its own individual deal. I don't know how feasible that is, but I'll tell you, if you add UConn, it certainly sounds like it becomes more feasible because you already got Houston. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, Baylor is a blue blood program now in basketball. Arizona just joined the conference. UConn being added. Kansas. I mean, there is just school after school that has a rich tradition in hoops and is also really good currently. And this would just add to that potential kind of, Death Star that they have in that sport. As far as football goes, it looks like there would be kind of an on-ramp period where UConn football would not join until 2031, which would allow them to continue to build and get their NIL in a good place and be more competitive over the next 6 or 7 years. So I think it's an interesting idea. Now, it would add to travel again. It would make the league basically nationwide, but that's the way the rest of the country is moving, right? Everybody's in the AC. We're playing an ACC team on the West Coast this week. The Big Ten has expanded in the West Coast. The SEC is really the only conference now that has regionality. That's it. They want to stay in the Southeast. They're dipping into Texas and Oklahoma, obviously, but that's about as far as they seem to want to go. The Big 12 has to keep being proactive, though, because I feel like at this point, the real situation is you have to find a way to outlast and outlive the ACC. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the coming months and years, but there's at least currently some turmoil in the ACC. Florida State, which dropped their first game to Georgia Tech over in Ireland this weekend, and Clemson are like, we're locked into this horrible TV deal through 2036. They don't want to be there. They're openly trying to find a way out. And so the Big 12 is in another good spot where it feels like there's a lot of unity within the conference. Now, that makes this decision interesting because if there truly is a lot of pushback and Yormark tries to really sell everybody on this, then that could create the first tension that we've really seen in the new Big 12. But for years, it feels like Brett's been trying to expand into the Northeast. He did that camp up in Rucker Park with Big 12 coaches and players where they worked with, young kids there, which was a cool idea. And this would plant your flag in that area of the country and allow you to have another blue blood in hoops, which, I like the let's not leave any rock unturned approach of, hey, if there's a way to squeeze some revenue out of something, let's find a way to do it. UConn though is kind of outside the box. Like, it doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the league. Even some of the schools now that are traditionally basketball still have a football identity, and UConn doesn't really have much identity at all in that, in that sport other than the Randy Edsel days. So I'll be interested to see where they land on it. But again, it's just early talks. The fact that it leaked, though, tells you that somebody's trying to get it out there and kind of say, okay, is this going to flop, or do people like this? What's the PR? Let's focus group this without doing a focus group and see what people think about it. It would make travel tougher, but I think eventually we're coming to a place where you're probably going to see pods or some sort of division structure where it makes it easier for teams to get around. So UConn, potentially, very early discussions. The Big 12 is going to have a board meeting next week, and they got to lay out plans and figure out if schools would agree to this. But early on, having some talks with UConn about joining the league. So we'll follow that story. We'll follow that story closely as it plays out over the next few weeks. When we come back, I'll get some of your reaction and wrap things up. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. 9:30 kickoff Friday night. You might think to yourself, man, I'm going to have to take a nap. Am I going to be able to stay up for the season opener? Grab a 5-hour energy shot to stay alert and watch all your favorite games. Or if you stayed up late to, watch that intense overtime game the night before, take a 5-hour energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. 0 sugar, convenient portable size, perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. 5-hour energy website has flavors galore: watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered straight to your door. You see it in the convenience store all the time. You go in the gas station, there it is, 5-hour energy. You can also order it online, get it sent straight to you. Build your own 12-pack, build your own 24-pack, 5-hour energy, plenty of flavors. If you need to pick me up before the Stanford game this weekend, I recommend it. 5-hour energy, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. All right, we got Real Deal Football in a couple days. On Friday, I talked with Matt Jennings about this team, where they are, and, getting ready for the season, essentially. What's it going to look like when TCU takes the field? Jim Norris says, just as an aside, I never get why Coach Dykes was so impressed with Chandler Morris, especially since he was unable to score against Colorado before he was injured, compared to what happened in the second half when TCU ran away with the game against a vastly inferior Colorado squad. Yeah, I mean, the love for Chandler, I think he had a great game against Baylor, which Sonny wasn't there for that. So I don't really know how much that affected his thinking. But I think he's a good practice player. I mean, coach's kid. I feel like he probably understood the system really well and could make some good throws, make good decisions. For whatever reason, when he started games, it just didn't work. Now, I will say he played a half of football against Colorado. He got hurt, and then Max took over and did the rest. I think that was for the best, Max being the starter. But I do wonder what the season would look like if he ended up starting the whole year, because I think he would have progressively gotten better. And I feel like last year, part of the problem was, not to make excuses for him, but part of the issue was he was coming off that injury, and I don't think he really trusted his knee. And so that took away part of that kind of improvising game that he had. But, yeah, it didn't work. I mean, the bottom line was they thought he was the guy, and he wasn't. And so now they moved on to Josh Hoover. And so at this point, I don't really see the sense of hand-wringing about it, but I totally understand, why were they so enamored with this guy at quarterback? And, Sonny's got a good reputation with QBs, but at the same time, he sort of always had just dudes who fit within his system, not necessarily super dynamic players. And Max was a great athlete and could do things with his legs that a lot of people couldn't. But, Shane Buechele at SMU, Jared Goff at Cal, I know he ended up being a first-round pick, but number 1 overall pick, in fact. But in the NFL, he's been kind of a game manager. He's just had guys that sort of understood what they needed to do and played within their limitations. And so I think for whatever reason, he's kind of drawn to that. Jacob Langford said, let's get to 10 wins, get to the Big 12 championship game, and sneak into the playoffs. Yeah, that's a possibility this year. You don't have to go 12-0 or 13-0. If you win the Big 12, you're in. And this is a league with a lot of parity. So if you can get to Arlington, I don't feel like you're just going to be completely overwhelmed by the team you played. He also asked if Matt and I are still blocked by Gary Patterson. I definitely am. I can't speak for Matt. But, yeah, Gary blocked me during that tough season in 2021. And, hey, I get it. People criticize you. You don't want to hear it no matter who you are. So he probably just thought that was the easiest way to tune it all out. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm fighting through COVID, have been for the past few days. It seems to get worse. But, I don't think you're supposed to do daily podcasts in these conditions. But, hey, I can't take a day off because it's game week. So I'm going to keep bringing you content as much as I can. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.